I'm your friendly neighborhood Web-Warrior Fanatic, and in this video, I'll be giving my first thoughts about Daredevil, this new hero that was previewed for Marvel Champions from the Fear No Evil expansion, and I'll be giving some predictions and making the case for why, just from the cards that we've seen, why I think that he will be the strongest hero in Marvel Champions, if not that, at least a top 5 hero, like an S tier hero in the game. And this was an opinion that I thought was not super controversial because in our live stream where we talked about, Daredevil, I had a poll for all my chatters, and 80% of everyone, in that live stream voted that, Daredevil would be a top 5 hero in the game, like an S tier hero. And a quarter of that 80% also voted that he would be the number one strongest hero in the game, just because from the cards that we've seen, he looks insanely bonkers. But I'm kind of learning now that that may not be the case. So I'll give a huge shout outs here to Xavier Monroe, who commented on a short that I did for Daredevil here, saying, I seriously don't think that he will be the strongest in the game. Other content creators don't seem to think as highly of him either. But it's going to be insane, and I can't wait to try him. So, yeah, I'm going to, make my prediction right here that I do think that he will be one of the strongest here in the game, if not, straight up the strongest. And if I'm wrong, I will totally make a video, talking about how I'm wrong, later on. But just from what we've seen, he looks crazy. And yeah, I don't think other content creators will like make such a heavy statement. Like so, I don't know the correct way to describe, but kind of like not a safe statement to say. But I have no problems doing it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I can own up to that. But I think it's gonna be super fun to talk about because I legitimately do think that just from the cards that we've seen, I don't even think it's that crazy of a take to say that. And I didn't know that it was until after the live stream in like other videos and in posts in my community tab on my channel. Other people talked about that as well. And I'm kind of learning now that, okay, maybe this is, not the most normal take. But okay, let's go ahead and just talk about his cards here. And yeah, Daredevil, his main mechanic is he has a sense deck. So Matt Murdock begins the game with a sense deck. And yeah, Force Interrupt, he has it on both sides here. Whenever a sense upgrade would leave play, you place it on the bottom of the sense deck instead. And in his hero form, he has the ability Superhuman Senses as an action, where he can play the top card of the sense deck as if it were in your hand by paying its cost. And Daredevil, he basically has these 5 cards right here in the sense deck. He has the acute tactility, enhanced olfaction, heightened hearing. He's got radar sense and superior taste. And these 5 cards, they're all upgrades, and they all have the sense trait right there. And basically, you attach them to something. So like this one says attach to enemy. This one says attach to a scheme. This one attach to an enemy. And these two here can attach to an enemy or a scheme. And basically, he has all these cards right here. And yeah, it revolves around playing those cards, and they're kind of like sensing things, right? Because Daredevil, he can radar sense, so you attach to like the villain, for example, then he's sensing where the villain is. So after you attack them, he senses them, he can attack again, do another 3 damage to the enemy. They're usually going to be responses or interrupts here based on something else that you're doing, as Daredevil. Okay, so the first thing that this reminds me of, and this also remind a lot of other people of this as well, is Doctor Strange's hero kit. So we have Doctor Strange right here, and a lot of people say that Doctor Strange is the strongest hero in the game of Marvel Champions. I agree that he's one of the strongest heroes. I don't think he's like the tip top number 1 strongest. But the big thing that makes him so powerful is because he has an invocation deck, also having 5 cards in a separate set aside deck. So Daredevil has that same mechanic here with the sense deck. So these 5 sense cards, Doctor Strange has these 5 invocation cards. And with Doctor Strange's hero ability, Spell Mastery, as an action, you can exhaust Doctor Strange and pay the cost of the top card of the invocation deck and resolve special ability on that card. So the main reason why people think that Doctor Strange is so powerful, and I would agree that this is the big reason why he's so strong, is because he has, this invocation deck. So why is the invocation deck so strong? The first thing of what makes the invocation deck so powerful is that all these cards here are essentially, -1 effective costs. And in Marvel Champions, what, effective cost, for a card means is how many resources are you using in order to play that card. So if we look at like a normal event here, like let's say the Astral Projection, right? This is a 2-cost Thor event. The actual effective cost, like the effective resource that's required to play this cost, is actually 3 because it's a 2-cost card, but this is also a card in your hand that you can spend as a mental resource. So if you have 5 cards in your hand, you're spending 3 effective resources, right? The actual card itself, the Astral Projection, and then 2 other resources in order to play this card. So, every single card here, the cost says, 2, 3, but the effective cost is actually, 3 here, 4 here, it's like +1 because of that card that's in your hand. Well, Doctor Strange, with these 5, invocation cards in his invocation deck, they all don't have that extra effective cost, right? So to play a card like the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak, for example, it's a 2-cost card, but the effective cost is actually still just 2 costs, right? It's not 3 costs for this card because the card is never in your hand. You're not losing this card as a potential resource that you could spend elsewhere. This card is a separate card. You have the 5 cards in your hand, and if you spend 2 resources in your hand, you can play the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak by using Doctor Strange's hero ability right here, right, with this spell mastery. So having this essentially be like 1 cost cheaper than what they would normally be if they were just cards in your hand makes it super cost efficient and very, very high tempo, right? So comparing this to other cards, like if they're in your hand, this would essentially be like a 3-cost card, right? This would be like a 2-cost card. This is another 2-cost card, but they're like all 1 cheaper. So for just 1 effective resource to be able to remove 4 threat from a scheme, that's very good. For this right here, for just 2 effective resources to do 7 damage, that's really good. Normally it's going to be 4 effective resources, right? The swing web kick is like our golden standard for attack events. 4 effective resources to do 8 damage. Well, this is just 2 effective resources to do 7 damage, right? So very, very cheap, very good. A great curve for Doctor Strange. So Daredevil, he has that exact same thing because right here you are playing the top card of the sense deck as if it were in your hand. It's not actually in your hand. So all these cards right here are effectively 1 cost, and you can almost say that they are similar to like a 0-cost card that's in your hand, right? Because you're losing that card, that 0-cost event, if you're playing from your hand. This right here, it is a 1-cost upgrade that you could just play, with a resource that's in your hand, right? So acute tactility right here, it gives you a ready whenever you defeat an enemy or remove the laster from a scheme. Let's look at the damaging right here, right? This is after you attack attached enemy, you can discard this card and do 3 damage to an enemy. So basically, if you have this radar sense right here, this upgrade, you can play it from the top card of your invocation deck by just spending 1 resource from your hand, right? Then you play it, you attach the enemy. Let's say you attach the villain, for example. Then Daredevil can swing for 2, attack the villain, and he can discard his card to do 3 damage to an enemy, right? You get it on demand on the table already, and you can set these off whenever you want to. So I've seen a comparison where people talk about Doctor Strange and say that, well, his invocation deck is, much better because, oh, these cards are just better. They have like better effects, right? You can stun an enemy and do 7 damage here, right? This way you confuse the enemy and remove 4 threat. And I would agree that, Doctor Strange's cards, if they were the same cost as Daredevil's cards, they are better. However, they're differently costed, right? All of Doctor Strange's cards cost a little bit more for Strange to do than it is for Daredevil to do his. Because of spell mastery here, you have to exhaust Doctor Strange and pay the cost of the top card of the invocation deck. For Daredevil, he doesn't have to exhaust here, right? So you just play it as an action. You play the top card of the sense deck as if it were in your hand. So literally in 1 turn, on turn 1 actually, Daredevil can play out all of these cards, right? Because on turn 1, let's say you have 6 cards in your hand, you pay a resource, play this card, put it on the table, it's an upgrade. Pay another resource in your hand, right? Play this card. Your 3rd resource, play this card. 4th resource, play this one. 5th resource, and then you pay this one, right? So you can play all these cards right here, on turn 1. Just get them all on the table as upgrades and immediately do stuff if you want to. Doctor Strange cannot do that, right? He has to exhaust himself. Then you pay the cost of, like, let's say, like, this card right here. So you pay a resource from your hand. You trigger the ability right here. And then if you can ready up Doctor Strange, then he might be able to do another one. But yeah, it's a lot different for Doctor Strange than it is for Daredevil. And it's much easier for Daredevil to pay senses. So if we're comparing, like, 1 for 1 for these cards, Daredevil's cards are even cheaper than what they would be for Doctor Strange's cards. And, it makes sense because a lot of Daredevil's cards, so you actually have to do another condition in order to play, right? Because they're not just straight up actions, right? For Doctor Strange, there's specials here, and when you trigger the action here, you're essentially triggering the special right here. For Daredevil, these are all like interrupts or responses, so you have to do something else in order to do it. But that something else is oftentimes, tied to your basic activation anyways. So instead of having to just exhaust just for the effect of these cards right here, right, you can exhaust Daredevil, and you can just attack for 2. You actually get 2 damage off, and then you can trigger, the radar sense, for example. After you attack the touch enemy, you can discard this card and do 3 damage to the enemy. On the similar vein, Daredevil can exhaust to thwart for 2 with his basic thwart activation, and then after he thwarts that attached scheme, you can discard this card and remove 2 threat from that scheme. So you can trigger the stuff with Daredevil using his actual basic activation to get value from the activation and this card, not just exhaust him for no other purpose other than to trigger, the effects of his side deck, right? So that's the thing that Daredevil's got over Doctor Strange. And, I want you guys to post in the comment here. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that it's kind of a wash here? Like the way that it's set here for Daredevil kind of equals him out to what Doctor Strange has got? Or do you think that from just what we've seen right here, do you still think that Doctor Strange's invocation deck is stronger than Daredevil's sense deck? Or do you think that Daredevil's sense deck is more powerful than Doctor Strange's invocation deck? From just that right now, I would say that they are even. I would say that it's a wash in terms of how Daredevil's cards are costed compared to how Doctor Strange's cards are costed. Now, I do want to bring up another point for Daredevil that I don't really see a lot of people talk about, and it's that he has permanent resource sinks. If you guys have played Marvel Champions, you guys probably know how powerful it is to have resource sinks, and Daredevil has that on turn 1 with this like side deck, right? This sense deck right here, because they're all 1-cost cards. So let's say, for example, you're playing Daredevil, and you have your 5-card hand size, right? And let's say you want to play your Avengers Mansion, right? Avengers Mansion, it's a 4-cost card, but it's 5 effective resources because you're actually losing a card from your hand as well, right? So let's say you spend the 4 resources in your hand, right? You play the Avengers Mansion, then you exhaust the Avengers Mansion and then draw a card. So you just draw a card, right? Well, with that one card you drew, unless it's like a 0-cost card, you usually can't play it, right? That happens a lot in Marvel Champions where you're stuck with like 2 cards left in your hand or like 1 card left in your hand. They don't necessarily want to say, but like, you just don't have a perfect turn to like spend everything cleanly from your hand. Well, that will never be the case for Daredevil because with this side deck right here, right? These are all just upgrades that you can play at any time. They're not events, so they're good to always get on the table even if you're not triggering them right away. So if you play like a helicarrier, you'll never be stuck with like, okay, well, this turn I won't be able to use a helicarrier. Or you play like a mansion, you'll never be like, okay, this turn, there's no point for me to draw the card of the mansion, right? You can always use that card draw and use that resource to play the top card of the sense set, which they're all 1 cost. So like you guys know how powerful the pull aspect is. Daredevil is kind of like a built-in pull aspect type of hero because he's got that on-demand resource sink. Maybe you don't actually need this cost reduction this turn, but just get the enhanced old faction down on the table. Next turn or another future turn, you can take advantage of it, right? Maybe you don't need the ready from acute tactility, or maybe you don't need the damage from Raider Sense this turn. It doesn't matter. Just get it on a table, and in a future turn when you do need that damage, you can trigger this, whenever you want. All you gotta do is attack, the enemy that you set this on. So that is just crazy bonkers versatility, and I think that gives him a huge one-up on Strange on just as you're playing the game of Marvel Champions and you want to spend your turns cleanly, you're never going to be wasting resources because of that, because Daredevil always has that side deck resourcing that you can use at any time. Okay, next, I want to talk about a combo here for Daredevil and how little setup he needs and just how high tempo that he can be. Okay, so a common way that I think will be a very strong way to play Daredevil. If you are playing with no other cards, really that can do anything. Like if you have all bad cards in your deck, right? So if you have good cards, you can do a better combo. But on turn 1, right? Let's say you have, you dropped your hand size of 6 and you flip up to hero form, right? On this turn 1 already, you can play every single card in the sense deck. Okay, so you just do it on turn 1, right? Like I was talking about that earlier. So you play all these cards, right? This one you attach to like the villain, attach to the villain, attach to the villain, attach to the villain, and this one you can attach to like the main scheme, right? So just attach all of them, right? Then Daredevil, all of the senses are going off. He's sensing everything. He's feeling everything out right now, right? Then on turn 2, let's say you draw into like 2 copies of your attack event right here, your cross examination, right? So with no other setup other than playing those cards, right? Let's calculate right now how much damage Daredevil can do on turn 2 if he is playing his 2 attack events right here. Okay, so we already have now 1, 2, 3, 4 of these upgrades that are attached to the villain, right? So we look at his cross examination right here. It's a 1-cost event. Here, action attack, do 3 damage to enemy. For each upgrade attached to enemy, you may deal 1 additional damage to it. So this is going to do 1 for 7 damage now on turn 2 if we did that, other thing on turn 1. So, okay, let's say Daredevil does this, right? Okay, so let's say on your turn 2, you got 5 cards in your hand now, including, let's just say hypothetically, you got 2 copies of your cross-examination of those 5 cards, right? So Daredevil can, he pays a resource from his hand, and he actually plays a cross-examination from his hand, right? That's 2 effective resources that you're losing from your hand now to play this card. Then you do 7 damage on the villain, right? You punch the villain here, cross-examination, punch the villain and you do 7 damage. Now, after you do that, you can immediately trigger your radar sense. After you attack attached enemy, which you just did by playing an attack event, right? It's still considered an attack. You can discard this card to do 3 damage to the enemy, right? So after you attack the enemy with the cross-examination, which is an attack, you can trigger your radar sense and do three more damage, right? So now that's 10 damage to enemy, right? And you've lost 2 cards from your hand. You still have 3 cards left in your hand. Okay, well, where is this card going to go? This card will go with the Force Center right here. When a sense upgrade will leave play, you place it on the bottom of your sense deck instead. Well, it's also going to be the top card of your sense deck, right? It's the only card in your sense deck because all your other sense cards are already on the table. So you can trade the action immediately, play the top card of your sense deck as if it were in your hand. So you have 3 cards left in your hand, right? You can spend another resource, play the radar sense right back down, attach it to the villain again. Then you can play another cross-examination, right? So that's going to require 2 effective resources. So now that's all 5 resources. You have no more cards in your hand. To play the second cross-examination, it's going to do another 7 damage. Then you can proc Raider Sense again, do another 3 damage. So now you have 10 damage on a villain, and then Daredevil can exhaust and swing for 2. That's 22 damage from Daredevil on turn 2. No other hero is matching those type of numbers, guys. That is insane numbers on turn 2 with no setup, right? All you got, like, no setup in terms of, like, you don't need extra economy. You don't need to actually, play your Quinn carrier out, play your Heli carrier, play your Avengers Mage. You don't have to get any of that stuff set out. You can just do that. And that gives him, like, that makes him a very, very powerful rush hero. And, you can play him aggression, and let's say you don't draw into your attack event, that's fine. You can have other attack events do the damage, and you can still proc the rare sense with that. You can have events to ready up Daredevil, and whenever he's readying up, he can use his basic, basic attack and trigger the rare sense to get more damage off. Daredevil's damage is insane because of that, but he also has insane thwarting with the exact same combo, but with the superior taste. So this one you can attach to a scheme. As a response, after you thwart attached scheme, you can discard this card to remove 2 from that scheme. This combos with Daredevil, with his super duper cheap thorn events here with Deposition and the Living Lie Detector, but you can also combo this with, the Justice Thor event that we've seen for Martial Artists in Daredevil's Precon, which is going to be a 0-cost Thor event for him, right? As long as it is him thwarting here, you can trigger the superior taste as a response to that. So that's a big thing with Daredevil and Doctor Strange, is that not only can he combo off really well and set things up really well for himself, versus Doctor Strange's invocation deck, where you don't really know which invocation is coming up, it's going to be randomized. Daredevil can always look at the cards in the deck and set up how he wants to, but he can combo it with himself and really spam and abuse it. And that is just really powerful. So to me, Daredevil's Sense deck is far superior to Doctor Strange's invocation deck. And if you think Doctor Strange's invocation deck is, like, top tier and that's what makes him an S tier hero, then Daredevil has to be an S tier hero too, right? Like, by default. And yeah, I mean, that's just my thoughts here, guys. I could entirely be wrong, but I'm going to double down right now that I think that he's going to be the strongest hero in the game just because of that high tempo there. And if he has any, like, weapon upgrades, like if he gets ability clubs that can exhaust to do damage by himself, that's crazy, because if that's an attack, that will be able to trigger the rare sense as well. Another on-demand way to trigger, these on-demand upgrades is insane. The fact they're not events, you can just play them on the table and trigger them whenever you want. And the cross manipulation that you can do for a player like me that likes to set things up, Daredevil is going to be really fun to, plan out your turns, have fun, like, be very tactical in how you're playing him, and set up your turns to do tons of damage, tons of dooring, very, very high impact late game whenever you get that set up. But even early game, if you just want to focus on damage and rushing the villain down, he has the capability to do that. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about a few comments I've seen about Daredevil not really being thematic. I agree that I think Daredevil can be more thematic, but I do believe that the sense deck, it feels thematic to me, right? Because take the radar sense, for example, right? You're attaching the radar sense to the villain. That, to me, is like Matt Murdock. He's marking the villain, right? He's sensing where the villain is with the radar sense. So whenever he attacks them, he can attack them again because he already knows they're right there. So he gets like another, a cheaper shot straight at the villain, right? Superior taste, I think this is thematic as well, right? You're essentially tracking something, right? Either the main scheme or a side scheme. And I love the art here, right? He's looking like, I don't know what that is. It's probably not a good thing for No Lake, but he's tasting it. He knows what's going on. So after he thwarts, he can do even more thwarting on top of that because he's tracking it with his senses, right? It's all of his senses ability that's allowing him to do that. And the same thing works for all of these right here. So I think that, I think that they are pretty thematic to how he wants to play, but I did wish that he had more alter ego stuff going on. I wish that he could mitigate threat a little bit better than the way that his kit does right now. But I think he has a very base kit that has, a lot of thwarting, a lot of attacking. I think that that's what they want for a hero that is probably going to be a huge staple hero for Marvel Champions going forward. And I could definitely see him being a huge fan favorite and being a huge go-to hero for the community for, just testing scenarios, playing for fun. I can see him being a big hero for that. And I think he will be that type of hero. I think he has so many unique aspect synergies because his kit, it's not very streamlined. He has a sense deck, but you don't actually even have to play those sense cards. They enhance everything else that you're doing. So I talked about before, he has really good hooks in every single aspect, right? He's got the justice hooks with his alter ego thwarting and just the thwarting sense. He's got a good aggression hooks with his radar sense doing a bunch of damage that we just talked about and lined up earlier. He's got good protection hooks here because this is a great way for him to defend, getting -3 attack. If you spam this every single turn, getting -3 attack for the villain every single turn can be insanely powerful, and it makes sense. It's thematic with his hide and hearing. He hears a villain attacking, so he's gonna jump out of the way or like block, so he can block out some of the damage here from the villain's attacks, right? So yeah, and then obviously he's got really good leadership hooks as well because Elektra is a very good ally that you can prevent her from taking console damage as long as you're in Daredevil form because Daredevil will take damage for her. I talk about the flare here, how I love how she says, I don't need your protection, Matt, but he's still going to protect her anyways. So yeah, that's just my initial thoughts here on Daredevil. I could entirely be wrong, and I will make a dedicated video talking about how I'm wrong, if I'm wrong, but just from the cards that we've seen right here, I am super excited. Personally, I did want Daredevil to not be so powerful. I want him to be like a B tier level hero, just because, he's not the strongest hero, in Marvel lore. But I'm not mad. We've waited so long for it. I think that the wait was well worth it if he is an S hero and if he is the strongest hero in the game. I don't really mind that. He's the most anticipated hero in Marvel Champions since I've been playing the game. So yeah, I don't mind at all. I love that for his sense cards here. He has like the little radar thing in the art rare. I think that that's a really nice detail. And yeah, that's just my prediction, guys. Let me know down in the comments why you think I'm wrong or why you agree with me. And yeah, we're coming back to this video after the community gets to play Daredevil, and we have like a community consensus type of a vibe. And yeah, we'll see what everyone thinks here after we can all play him. I hope you guys all enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys all in the next one.